Hi, welcome to Two Non-Doctors. I'm Liz Mealy.
I'm Maria Shahada.
Look at this. What was it?
That
What was
is
it? I look like an
very
adult.
pretty.
Thank you.
Elegant. And
I got this at
yeah,
a thrift store in London for £3 together with you in
unbelievable.
March.
I feel like I just bought the same shirt at a thrift store.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's something wrong with it. I'm sure if I wore it more than just an hour while podcasting, I'd find out it's itchy or that it's given me fleas or something.
Like I just bought it. Hold on.
Oh no, oh no, oh no.
Oh shit. This is what I call good radio.
Yeah. Also, there's a part of me that, like, you know how like people have been like masturbating on Zoom calls.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
sort of. It's not
the same. So mine is like plain black, and then it has a little bit of.
All right.
Yeah, I almost look like a respectable witch.
Respectable witch.
Like a witch that like pays her taxes.
The witch that's been around for a while, and the newer witches are a little bit bitchier. Like all.
Yeah, and I'm like, you can still be kind and a witch. Like you can still cast spells and be a good person. Like guys, yours is a little bitchy. It's a lot more sexiness than mine.
Okay. I've had such a long day. I got up so early because I was doing a live radio show, which is a lot scarier than a recorded like podcast, for instance. It's an hour long. I was a guest. I'm the only comedian, which you know, when you're the only comedian and it's a journalist and a host and you go, oh God, like this means.
Yeah. I'm not smart enough to be here.
Comedians know how to riff off of you. So you say something, they say something, you say something, and it just kind of escalates and it's fun.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah. And you're like,
you watch them let it hit the ground. Like you're literally like set up and you're like, a child could catch this. And then you just watch, like literally the host and the journalist, you just watch it hit the ground. And then you look like the moron and you're like, no, we're at a baseball game and you didn't even bring a glove. Like, I'm so disappointed in you guys.
They were very nice. Like, and they were interesting and good. And like, I think, I mean, like he asked questions, I answered them, but it didn't feel like even like morning radio hosts know to at least have a little bit of fake laughter just to allow that part of you to come out more.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it was, I did feel like I was bombing because it was on the phone too. It wasn't over Zoom. I just felt like I was bombing for an hour and I had to talk about the news and they gave me the stuff, like all the topics the night before. And I had a show out of town. I spent from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. this morning, just like looking up all the news stories. They were like, did you watch they assumed I watched the debate. They were like, so you watched the debate. What'd you think? And I was like, I didn't fucking watch the debate. I didn't have time to watch the debate. I watched clips about the debate and I read people talk about the
Yeah. And it's also soul crushing. So I used to do this show. I don't do it as much anymore just because of COVID, but John Fugelsang had a political show on Sirius XM and I would do it like once a month, once every 2 months. I've been doing it for like 6-7 years. You know, I'm maybe a little more politically inclined because of, I mean, Trump just kind of made everybody. I mean, there's children that fucking know about politics now, but there was something about it that I was able to spin my ignorance. Like I know how to take, like somebody would be like, what do you think of this? And I'll be like, well, and I'll turn it into like a funny question and people will be like, Liz, she's always smart. And you're just like, oh, but you know, cause I'm always, I just feel like another sports analyst, like it's volleyball. And people are just like, oh, look at her hitting it back. And they're just happy that I'm trying. Yeah. And I've set myself up as like the funny, ignorant person. And it's the best thing you can do for your brand when you're just in a sea of like unknown, like when a bunch of scientists are talking and we're like, I have a podcast called Two Non-Doctors. Like,
that's what it is in the end. You just have to remember, like, you're not the analyst. You're not the journalist.
Yeah.
You're there to be the dumb shit. You know, like, what's up with fucking, why can't Manchester have any money? It's just, let them eat. Wait, that wasn't fun. You know what I mean? That's the kind of material I have to make jokes on. How are you supposed to make jokes on, like, children that are starving and the government refuses to give them free meals over lockdown? Like, how do you make that funny? I did.
Yeah. It's always really difficult where it's not your area expertise. It's sad and you have to be the palate cleanser or the tension breaker. And you're just like, hey man, I have a dark sense of humor. I can joke about death all day long, but you have to be receptive to it.
Yeah.
You can't be like, hey, we brought you on for comedic relief. And we're like, well, we don't joke about cancer. And you're like, well, that's literally how I've gotten by is joking about the darkest concepts.
When we did the Vag podcast with Adrian Appalucci and Sarah Talamach, I made like a suicide joke and they went, Jesus. And I was like, what? Like, this is Adrian's MO is dark. What the fuck did I get a Jesus for?
They were like, we weren't expecting, we're the ones that say fucked up stuff. I've been in a group with comedians and gone too far and felt abandoned. Like that's where it's crazy, where you hit the boundary of the people feel boundaryless, and you're just like, you can't leave me.
How am I the freak? Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck you. I genuinely, I remember this. So I don't even know what it was about, but I was at the cellar table and I made some like let them all die kind of joke about something, and everybody pulled back. And I was like, I fucking hate this business sometimes. Like you can't really, like I'm telling you, like 5 comics made me feel like a heartless freak. And I was like, I can't. First of all, I'm joking. And second of all, fuck you guys. Fuck you guys.
That's really funny. It was probably timing. It was probably like when everything was at its most sensitive and everybody's like, I'm not going down with you, Liz. Even though it's like, I agree with you. And that was really funny. I'm not going down with you, Liz.
Yeah. But if anybody's recording this or anybody near our table, I don't agree with Liz Mealy. I mean, I like making the most fucked up joke at the worst possible timing. I mean, that's how we became friends. Let's do some announcements real quick.
You all know by now.
Let's speed it up. Patreon. Thank you. You guys are the best. We have bonus episodes, extended interviews, stickers. You can pick out our Googles. You could fucking come on and Google with us.
You're like selling a blender on an infomercial right now.
Get it, guys. You can chop it. You can chop it. You can blend it. It does everything. You'll never leave the house. But yeah, Patreon. Thank you to everybody that currently gives to us and future people that are going to give to us.
Subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already on iTunes and Stitcher. It helps us out a lot. It helps us get seen. It helps our egos. We love it. And we love hearing from you and hearing that if you like us. So you can follow us on Twitter and YouTube at 2 Non-Doctors with doctors spelled out. You can follow us on Instagram at 2 Non-Doctors, but with doctors being DRS.
And if you don't know, I have another Zoom diner coming up. I'm going to be in Connecticut, Philly, and Tampa in November. So it's all on my website, lizmealy.com.
I am going to be at Top Secret doing another hour on November 25th at 6 p.m. Come out and beat the audience that I performed at Top Secret already at 4 o'clock today, and they were already drunk. Like, you got to love London. They were fucking like, this might be the last day I ever go out because of lockdown.
Be buzzed. Don't be drunk. Be buzzed.
Yeah.
Be buzzed at 4 on a Saturday. Okay, I want to get into our fan mail. All right, so this is from Jeff. He is responding to our Screwing Our Future Self episode about retirement. I have to say, like, I wrote back Jeff and he's like, this is the advice I would give my daughter. And I was like, can I be your daughter? Like, I was like, this is such great advice. It was all stuff that I kind of heard in bits and pieces, and he just kind of put it in one interview and one email. And I was like, we're really making a community that's just helping us. Like we're discovering our own issues. We're having people tell us like how to like make money and be better, and like being diagnosed. Like I feel like I was diagnosed as ADHD, but like I read this email and I was like, I hope Jeff knows I'm printing this out and I'm going to do more research. And if I even make $1 after like doing some of the stuff he says, I'm going to be like, Jeff raised me. This is from Jeff. I feel your pain. I didn't start investing until I was 30. And when I got my first real job, I restored cars from 18 to age 30. Yes, no insurance or retirement. And then I got a response to a resume I sent to Intel corporations. And to my surprise, they hired me. Everything changed. I never had health insurance or a retirement fund opportunity until then. And I knew nothing about 401ks or anything. I started talking to people who did. I started my own personal board of directors. Don't get me wrong. They didn't know that this was their role in our relationships. I would fire and hire new people as I found better people without saying a word. Start there. Talk to reputable advisors. I recommend Fidelity. Talk to them before you have any money. Good advisors won't judge you. If you think you're being treated wrong, walk out. If a financial business won't openly state in their initial conversations, we have a fiduciary, a financial obligation to you. Leave. Learn the term, Google it. I actually said it wrong. Yeah. FIDUCIARY, obligation.
Fiduciary.
Oh, so I'm going to reread that.
Hang on.
Fiduciary?
Sounded English.
It also sounds like douchery, but I'll do it. The initial advice I was given is take 10 to 15% of your biweekly earnings and invest it into funds available within the advisor's portfolios. They will be high risk, medium risk, low risk stock investment plans. If you can only invest 6%, invest 2% in each of those brackets. Just start. I know, especially learning in London or New York City, your expenses are large. And then he goes into like micro investing and all this kind of other stuff. Tons of great advice. Like it sounds pasta. We are going to have a fight if you keep crying. Oh my God. I had to do this on a podcast the other day. I have to bring her over.
You had to bring her over as
in the middle of I was
if.
like doing a dating fucking podcast and she's like crying and I'm like talking about a bad date and then I had to be like this and then everybody in the stream was like, I love her. One of the main things I pulled away, like I love all the financial advice and it gave me a lot to think about. Learn from other people's experiences and create mentors and teachers. My dad always taught me, ask people questions that are already where you want to be. So I would look at Ted Alexandro's life or Jim Gaffigan's life or Greg Giraldo's life when I first started. And I was like, oh, I want to be on TV. I want to be doing an hour. I want to be, touring the world. I'm going to ask them how they got there and what they did. And I would write to comics. I would ask them questions when, we were on the road together or driving home. I know that's like a simple thing, but you start to see the people both being creative in how they go about something they don't know. And then also people like Jim Andrinos had a profound effect on me because he was one of the first people to bring me on the road. And I would hear him tell stories and some of them were cautionary tales. Some of them are things he wished he did better. Some of them are like, this is the best thing I did to be financially stable when things were up and down in this business. Cause he started, I think in the 80s. And to hear him say that about learning about finances or learning about stock exchange or learning about investing or retirement was just kind of music to my ears, where I think sometimes we make excuses for ourselves where you're like, well, I'm just not a financial person. I'm not an investor person. And you're like, well, at one point I wasn't a comedian and I wasn't a person that put on a podcast, or I wasn't somebody that had a lot of friends. And those things were so important to me that I made a point to read about it, educate myself, reach out to other people, make mistakes. Why wouldn't I do that for my financial freedom? Yes, the stock exchange is scary and weird and there's real consequences to it, but there's real consequences to doing comedy, to driving alone at 3 a.m., to not taking the job that's financially.
I've just never had grown-up money. That's the only reason I've never looked into it. Once I start making grown-up money, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I'll probably just hire someone to do it for me, to be honest. But I get that. Like once you get into a place where you think you can afford to have 10 to 15% of your earnings go towards investing, you do start looking into it. I just don't, I make like $12,000 a year. So
I actually reached out to my dad about this. So like my roommates, I kind of wanted to do a joke about it and it's just not working out. But everybody, when they started getting unemployment and we were getting that $600 check, every dude I know was like, invest. Because it was like a lot of money for comics that we were like, we never make consistent money. And they're like, invest. And I was just like, I was going to buy shoes, but okay. I really was like, save. Saving has never been my problem because I was raised to be like scarcity, and then this business creates scarcity because we're freelance. I don't like gambling, and that feels like gambling. If I save it and I don't touch it, it's always there. The risk taking that I see a lot of men in my life is, well, here's this money just sitting there. I don't really need it. I'm technically thinking about using it 40 years from now. Why not play around with a percentage of it that if I lose it, it's not that big of a deal? But I think we're always saving for a rainy day because even before the pandemic, you have a bad month, what have you. So I think it's really hard for me to get out of scarcity mode because our life is scarcity mode. And people that get paychecks every week, I think we're thriving somehow during scarcity mode because we live in scarcity mode, where I know people that were making, $150K a year that are kind of fucked because they lost their job. Their rent was a crazy amount of money and they have to make choices. And now we lost our job, but I've always set it up. I set my life up to have no money.
I always thought that that's why I've decided to make no money. It's just because it's like, then I can't lose it. Like if I lose it, nothing happens. Yeah. When you have nothing, 0 times 0 is 0. Like subconsciously, I'm just like, well, if I have no money, I have no problems.
I really liked the way Jeff broke it down in both a way of learning. We should be learning about it, and there's no excuse not to learn about it. And there's no reason as women and as freelancers that we shouldn't figure it out. This is the year that I started thinking that there's some value to it, even though it's our worst financial year.
That's why we're thinking about it. It's because it's our worst financial year, and we're going, all right, how do we not get in this position again where we're starting a podcast and talking on the internet?
100%.
How do we never do this again?
Anyway, we appreciate you. We're learning.
Thanks, Jeff.
You want to get into Googles?
Yes.
Do you want to start your
Yeah,
Google?
I'll start. So mine is, why does my room get messy so quickly? I clean it all the time. Like common areas, kitchens, living rooms, I'm on it. I wash dishes. I put dishes away. Living room's always clean. It's tip top. Things are in place. If a bottle is like the ingredients list is facing forward, I'll move it so that the label's facing forward. But my room, fuck it. Fuck all of it. Like I'll clean it put everything away. Everything's organized. I feel good. It's not like I don't understand the value of that, like a clean room and you feel good. And then literally like 20 minutes later, it's fucked again. I was like, is this a personality thing? And yes, it is. It's
Yeah. I am broken and it's very specific.
I mean, this website, it's the only one I visited, but it's about, it's like, yes,
it's like an anti-Maria Kondo.
Yeah, right.
She's like, you're fucked and you're always going to be fucked. There's no way we could help you.
Yeah, just like learn to love yourself. But I do feel good in a clean room. So I don't understand why I'm incapable of keeping a clean room. And it could be signs of depression, but I don't think that's my issue. Because I know when you're depressed, you're not going to do anything. You're going to I won't hang a dress in the closet on my best day.
That is such a quote. I won't hang a dress in a closet on my best day. It's like, what is that? If you don't love me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the room version.
Yeah. Signs of feeling overwhelmed, sign of your preferences. So maybe it's overwhelmed. Maybe it's because I split my time between here and Johnny's, but I don't think it's that. And it just goes personality, bitch. Advantages of messiness. So this goes into studies, and they did studies of people who keep their rooms very clean versus people who keep their rooms very messy. And they completed a survey and asked at the end if they wanted to donate to charity and if they'd like an apple or a candy bar. It's got to be weird to be a person in a survey because you know, it's like you don't really know what they're studying when you go in there. And so they're just like, is your room clean? Not really. Would you like to donate to charity? No. Would you like an apple or a candy bar? Are you okay? Like,
yeah.
What is
You're
this?
like, I know I'm failing the survey and I am going to be the bracket where people are like, don't be like this person. You know, they make a pie chart and they're like 90% of people that don't clean their room are selfish, fucked up people that like candy. Like,
yeah,
like,
well, that's
they don't
what
care
it
about
is.
the room or their body.
They don't give to charity and they take the candy, but they're heightened creativity. So people with messy rooms are more creative because you're not living within the boundaries of societal expectations. I'm summing the fuck out of this. People with messy rooms are excited about new things. Again, that's based off another study where you could get the health options on menus were described. These smoothies were described as classic or new, and people with messy rooms chose new, and the people with tidy rooms chose classic. On the
We're
whole,
just talking about boring people and exciting people at this point.
That's what it is. So I mean, basically, this is just one big humble brag. I'm really fun,
I'm
spontaneous,
really
creative.
Can I give my theory? As
yeah.
somebody that's my room literally surrounded by clutter, and I bought so many things to try to organize my desk. And this is my theory: decision fatigue. I cannot, like, I'm like, the receipts, I have to organize them and I don't want to organize them right now. And this piece of paper, I'm going to need it and I'm going to forget where I put it. So I'm just going to keep it there. And it's like, I have to see everything. I forget where I put stuff. And then I have to make decisions. Like, I have a book that I need to do stuff with and I could put it away and bring it back when I need it, but I'm going to forget about it. And I don't want to make that decision yet. So my desk is just an ode to decision fatigue. I have a whole little baby filing cabinet on my desk. I have a little thing that label maker and a little files, and it's clear, so I can't even like hide from it. And it's still all on my desk. I don't know what to do.
I mean, you've got so much going on that like that probably is the last thing your brain gives a shit about right now.
But I know when I have a clean desk or a clean room, I feel better. It makes me want to do stuff. It's weirdly empowering, yet I fight it at all costs. My desktop on my computer is the exact same way. Oh, my other theory is we live in a room. We're people with roommates. Right now, everything a human needs is in one room, as opposed to other people have apartments, full apartments they can decorate and put stuff in. They have full houses. People that keep stuff in their car. You know what I mean?
Garages and basements and attics.
Exactly. If you lived in a house, you would have a walk-in closet and you'd be able to put all your shoes in a certain place. Half the stuff that's in my room, I wouldn't ever keep in my room, but it's my stuff. I can't keep it out there. So that's what I'm hoping whenever I have my own apartment, is that I'll be like, I wasn't cluttered. I was in a tiny fishbowl and I needed to be in the ocean.
Yeah, that's what it is. And not that we're creative.
You want to hear my Google?
Yeah.
This one kind of made me laugh. And also just how like you came off like being like, the reason is I'm just really smart and creative, and that's why I have this problem. That's going to be the answer to mine as well, and it's going to be a braggy answer. So my question is, why do I have trouble watching embarrassing comedies or videos? I hate prank videos. I hate them. I hate embarrassing videos. I like comedies, but I struggle if I'm not watching it with somebody else. I really struggle to sit through a whole sitcom when they use too much embarrassment. So I started watching The New Girl. I was staying with my friend Amanda, and she was like, I like watching the show. And I never got into it. I don't know, sometimes just that sitcom thing is just
I never did either. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too formulaic. But I think when I want to numb out and I don't want to be challenged, it's nice to have a little bit of a silly comedy and just be invested in characters, the friends, maybe like a Sex in a City. I'm losing. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a perfect example. Is it the best show? No. But do I like it? Absolutely. I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's funny, it's silly, it's weird. But when it heavily relies on characters making dumb decisions or embarrassing decisions, or you just know something, I have to pause it. I pause it. I walk away. I've abandoned full shows because it was too much embarrassment.
Give me an example of a show, like an episode. Like, what's the plot?
I don't know what the plot is. It's just they're about to say something dumb. They're about to be caught literally with their pants down.
This is amazing. So what is it?
It's vicarious embarrassment. It's like a real thing. And so it's basically also known as secondhand empathy, the feeling of embarrassment from observing embarrassing actions of another person. So just by witnessing it, you literally feel the same way you would feel if it was happening to you. Individuals who experience social anxiety in their own way may experience familiar symptoms of like blushing, excessive sweating, trembling, palpitations, nausea, or other less severe symptoms. And they may also include cringing, looking away, and general discomfort. So I'm not so like the real level of embarrassment where it's happening to me, so the excessive sweating or trembling, but I am like looking away, cringing, discomfort. And what it basically says is people who generally feel more empathy often feel more secondhand empathy or embarrassment. And I was like, I'm just a good person.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's what I got. I was just like, I'm just such a good person. I can't even handle fake shows of sadness.
But when I was little, I mean, I'm talking really little, I used to watch Three's Company, and it would infuriate me because Three's Company is entirely based on misunderstandings.
Yes.
And I would be like, why don't you just say the thing so this can end? Like, even though it's like the whole reason for the sitcom. The other thing, like I was watching the movie Lady Killers, the one from 1955 today. I'd never seen it before. It's about a group of robbers who were trying to rob some trains coming in with money in King's Cross. And so they stayed with a little old lady next door so that they could plot this thing. And so, but she kept foiling them on accident with their innocence. And I just loved it so much. But there was a point where they got the money and I was like, that's amazing. They have the money. But then I knew, because of the way movies work, like they're going to lose it. And I was like, oh no. Like I didn't want to watch the part where there was conflict and they don't win, even though they're the bad guys. I don't want the conflict.
I'm the same way. Like I don't do well with aggression, any kind of murder.
So you can't watch like Curb Your Enthusiasm, for example, because he's all about the uncomfortable.
We watched a couple of episodes when we first became friends. You would literally be like, and I'd be next to you being like, oh,
is that when I was also feeding you kale soup and you're like, who's this bitch? I hate her so much.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know why I'm friends with this lady. She does not get me. I would say like, honestly, it's like embarrassment, violence, and then like, I can do like ghosts. Like, and that's the other thing. It's like ghosts and goblins and, zombies, it might be aggressive, but I can get through it because it's not real. But like murderers and rapists, that shit happens. That shit really happens. I can't.
I'm 100% with you on that. The stuff that's real, the villains in movies that could be an actual real person scares me way more than a ghoul. Like I watched Haunting of Bly Manor and it was a little creepy and I went to bed a little bit like, But for the most part, I was okay. But yeah, I can't watch something where it's like a serial killer.
I can't even watch the trailers. Like that's like, you'll watch something on YouTube and then I'll hear, luckily they give the music. It's like, dun, 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 and I'm like, ugh.
Okay. So that is just vicarious empathy. Isn't that what empathy is?
So empathy is usually, you make a really valid point. Okay. Sympathy is you could feel sorry for somebody. Like your cat dies and you're like, I'm really sorry that happened. Empathy is like, I have like, oh my God, like what if Pasta died? Like I would be devastated. She must be devastated. I'm so sad for her. So I think it's just a different form of empathy. I think the secondhand empathy is where you can't actually do something because it's not real. These are characters. I know they're characters. I know this isn't really happening. Yet I still is like, if that happened to me, I would be under like I could never go back to the office if that happened to me, even though this is a fake character in a fake office. And I know that. So I think secondhand empathy is like, it's not real, yet you still feel as if it's happening to that person. You're having an empathetic reaction to something that isn't real.
With the lady killers. And I was like, well, I don't want them to get caught, even though they're bad. they're bad people, but those are the people that I was introduced to first, and that's where my allegiance lies.
Yeah.
It's like I knew they had to, because that's how stories work. There has to be conflict, but it's just like, well, I don't want to deal with that part. I just want to see the fun part,
Yeah.
All right, good.
We're not fun to watch stuff with. Okay, you want to get into let's get personal?
Yeah.
This is like, I've written a lot of jokes recently about this topic, so this is kind of like a funny, weird, near and dear to my heart question. Do you believe in ghosts?
So the short answer is no, but I will say I've seen 2 in my life, and for somebody who doesn't believe in ghosts,
Yeah, that's
too many.
That's pretty big.
I was like in my early 20s, we drove down to Key West, and I was staying in the hotel, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm fully awake, but there was a figure at the foot of the bed, to the point where I was like, who the fuck are you? Get out of here. And I remember the figure just sort of like leaned down, and there was like a chest at the end of the bed, and it just disappeared there.
How old were you?
21, 22.
Okay.
And then when I first started coming to London, I stayed with Olivia, and I was on her couch. And this one I woke up, and it was the same thing that happened. I was fully awake, but I saw a knight standing over me, like full armor. And it was sort of like, and then gone. And I remember when I was staying with Elena in Stockholm, I was like, oh yeah, that must have been the 3rd time. So it was 3. I was like, I saw a ghost, but it was right before I was leaving for the airport to come back to London. I was like, by the way, she's like, you can't just drop that and then go. What do you mean you saw a ghost?
You saw a ghost and you ghost me? Fuck you.
Yeah. I was like, well, ghosts aren't real. She's like, you can't do that. You don't get to do that. You don't get to just tell me there's a ghost in my apartment. And then
yeah. That is such a bitch move. Oh my God. You're a shitty friend. Hey, there's a ghost in your apartment. I'll see you in a year.
Yeah, it's pretty much. She had this really funny joke about it. I can't remember. I have to ask her. But I was telling Johnny that story, and he was like, yeah, but I think that's sleep paralysis. I think that's a symptom of sleep paralysis.
So everything leads to most people that see ghosts or believe in ghosts. It has to do with trauma, sleep deprivation, sleep paralysis. It's all psychological stuff that, especially when all of the ones that you're saying have to do with you waking up and seeing something. A lot of people that say they see the ghost of somebody, it's also they've gone through like a traumatic event. They're not sleeping as well. There's all this kind of logic to why we would see ghosts or believe in ghosts or whatever. My answer is no. I would never like make fun of somebody because I know that knowledge that it has to do with trauma and just how the mind works when it's tired or sleep deprivation. That's honestly, sleep deprivation is a form of torture. It's when you start to hallucinate. It happens kind of accidentally, whether you have some kind of mental illness, often, we'll talk later, where like insomnia then creates those illusions, but also when you are mourning and are going through the trauma of sometimes how somebody died or the mourning process, you become there's sleep deprivation and blah, blah, blah. So I just think everything leads to it being a psychological or a coping mechanism. The same way that when you're younger, you might have an invisible friend. What is that called? They called an invisible friend?
Imaginary friend.
Thank you. Imaginary friend.
I had, can I just tell you about my imaginary friend?
Please, you're so excited. Your face is like, I've been waiting for this topic.
It was Michael Jackson. And we had hordes of people following us around. Like just a bunch of fans, and it was like me and Michael.
Please continue.
And we would just walk around. I'd just be hanging out with Michael. It's just all these people like being like, y'all are the greatest.
I can see why you got into the arts now. You're like, I was destined.
Why can't I just be a normal kid who likes Three's Company and has one imaginary friend?
One famous, literally the most famous person to be their imaginary friend.
Yeah, talk about really what is it called? Delusions of grandeur. It's almost what?
Oh yeah, that is a bad symptom of a lot of mental illness. Okay, so I don't believe in ghosts. I try not to judge people that believe in ghosts, but I do think it's all psychological or whatever. But I love fucking joking about it. I have a 5-minute bit about not believing in ghosts. I've tried to phrase it in a way that makes me not a monster, but I do feel bad. So my dad lost his mom when he was, I think, 1920. My aunt would have been, I think, 11, and she discovered that she was dead. She loses her mom. Her mom was always sick, and she discovered the body. I can't even imagine. But she talks to a medium, and the medium is like, your mom misses you, and your mom thinks about you. And I absolutely get why somebody would do that, and there's no judgment in my heart, and I say that in the joke. But the problem was is she kept reaching out to me to say, hey, I talked to grandma, and grandma thinks you're going to make it, and grandma believes in you. And it was weirdly very very triggering for me because here's a woman I've never met. I already have my own issues with my career and feeling like, what the fuck am I doing? And everything I do doesn't work out. And then my aunt's being like, some crazy lady in Pennsylvania is talking to grandma and telling and grandma's being like, I got you, girl. Like, it was just too much for me. And so I had to be like very nicely like, hey, I don't believe in ghosts. And I remember like talking to my sisters and being like, how do I say this nicely? Because I love our aunt and I don't want to shit on her. So I literally had to be like, I understand you've gone through loss and I can never imagine what that loss is. And I love you so much, but I don't believe in ghosts. Like, what a weird conversation to have with another adult. And I just don't think I want to talk about this. And she was very nice about it. She was like, oh, absolutely. And I love you and da-da-da-da. And she never brought it up again. But like, it was so many emails and it was so triggering. And then in my joke, I literally go like, we all do stuff that's not real. I take vitamins. I actually love playing with the silliness of ghosts, but it comes from a place of you're all nuts. And I want to buy ghost earrings now.
Oh, okay.
I wear them year round. I found a pair for $5 online.
And I need to slow you down.
Truly made this like a personal, private conversation. I'm going to get ghost earrings. I think ghosts are super stupid and funny.
My higher self was like, you need to save your friend.
I remember my old manager, she saw an early version of that joke and she goes, oh, I really liked it. She's like, I mean, I believe in ghosts. And she told me about a chest in their home that was from their great grandmother that she kept in the garage. She was so scared of it. And she had opened it and seen ghosts in it. And her mom was like, you can have it. And she was like, she didn't have the heart to tell her mom that she doesn't want it because she's scared of it. So she kept it in the garage. I was like, so she's telling me the story. And I was like, I feel for her. She had an experience.
This is what I wonder about that though. Like, cause I find that fun, like those sort of stories, like this chest. And like, I think it's haunted. It's got ghosts in it, but being afraid of it, other than creepy factor, like haunting a Bly Manor, there was an incident where a ghost was in a chest and you kind of see what happens to the ghost and it goes from the ghost's point of view, but the ghost actually like strangles her sister. And so I could see being afraid of a ghost because it's like there's a real threat of dying, but nobody's actually, like, you never hear reports of people just dying from being strangled from nothing.
I think my biggest thing with ghosts is how people have decided they come about. And I pick this apart in my joke, is like they have unfinished business. Who doesn't have unfinished business? How are you going to say that this grandmother that wrongly died in a fire is haunting this house? But, any enslaved person doesn't have unfinished business. It's just a little silly who they nitpick has unfinished business or who would come around and seek revenge. It's just hard not to pick it apart and be like, why would this person have unfinished business or this person be angry? And then why is Casper so nice and cute? Like, it's just, it makes no sense.
Do you ever play with the Ouija board?
When I was very young, like probably like 8 or 9.
In high school, me and my friend Whitney played with the Ouija board, and it was like a 19-year-old named Jacob. All he said to us was, "There's no weed here." It was like, oh damn.
Okay, should we get into our sponsor?
Yeah. You know how I'm always dieting?
Yeah.
I'm always trying different things like being vegan and stuff. And like keto has been honestly, it's been the most successful one. But like there are things you miss out on, like dessert and cereal. Like I've always loved cereal. I would like cereal for dinner, cereal for breakfast, cereal for lunch. I love cereal. You just sort of miss out on that because there's no way you can have like a sugary cereal on a keto diet. But now I have options.
Yeah. Magic Spoon cereal. It is 0 sugar, 11 grams of protein, and only 3 net grams of carbs in each serving, which is awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. They have 4 flavors. They have cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry. And I don't know about you, when I gave up Frosted Flakes, it was like burying somebody.
It was also like last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm absolutely excited about Frosted Magic Spoon. It is keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. They're helping us in every which way. They're just like, honestly, I don't even think you need to have 3 balanced meals. You can just have our cereal.
If you want to try it, they have variety packs, so you can try all 4 flavors, which is personally is what I love because I hate choosing like just one. But if you want to try it, you go to magicspoon.com, /2nondoctors, and doctors is DRS. If you put in the promo code 2nondrs, you get free shipping. And that's awesome. And we thank Magic Spoon for being our sponsor. Thank you, Magic Spoon.
Yeah, we've already changed our lives. Our topic this week is bipolar disorder, which sounds weird to say is near and dear to my heart because it's what runs in my family.
How many people in your family have bipolar?
So this is the thing, is that I think some of it's undiagnosed. So both my grandmothers, again, I previously talked about, both my grandmothers were mentally ill. They were in and out of mental hospitals and committed suicide. And so I never met them. This was like 50s, 60s, 70s that this was going on. So I don't think my parents really knew. They were young when this was happening, but my brother got diagnosed with bipolar 1 when he was having like psychotic breaks. He's been in and out of mental hospitals. And when my brother was acting weird and strange and got diagnosed, my dad was like, he's acting like my mother. So I don't exactly know what my mom's mom had, but I think we can safely say that my grandmother, my mom on my dad's side, clearly had bipolar 1. And maybe she could have, because like they first diagnosed my brother with schizophrenia, but later changed it to bipolar 1, and he absolutely is bipolar 1. So maybe she had some other version, but I think it's safe to say that my grandmother probably had bipolar 1. And I should probably break it down. I have a joke. I talked about my brother dealing with bipolar 1. I've talked about all the other issues kind of in my family in jokes. But one of the things that I've been complimented on because of the joke about my brother is I break down just very simply and succinctly the difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. So bipolar 2, I say, is depression, then mania. And then bipolar 1 is depression, mania, psychotic break. And that's just a very simplistic version of it. But what people don't realize is psychotic breaks happen with schizophrenia, and they can happen with bipolar 1. The way to kind of tell the difference is psychotic breaks with bipolar 1 are kind of based in reality in some sense. So like my brother thought people were spying on him, that like the Wi-Fi was like stealing his thoughts, that he was Jesus. Like he had these grandiose conspiracy or thoughts or delusions, but in a lot of ways they could kind of happen. Schizophrenia, it's like not based in reality. Like it's like dinosaurs are stealing my food, and sometimes the words don't even make sense. Like it's distinct stages of depression, mania, and psychotic break. Well, I think with bipolar 2, it's broken down, and clearly I'm going to fumble some of this, but like from what I understand, it's more hypermania. You're not as high as you would be in the mania in bipolar 1, but also you just need to have mania once to be considered bipolar and not depressed. Like a lot of people that are bipolar sometimes get diagnosed as depressed because they might have more depressive episodes and not many mania episodes. But really they say if you've hit mania once and then have depressive episodes, you're bipolar 2, as opposed to depression is you have these depressive bouts, but you've never hit mania. So it can get confusing. It's a lot about patterns. Clearly, like my brother was diagnosed at 19, and maybe his diagnosis would be different than somebody that's diagnosed at 35 because they've had more experiences and they can go, well, this time I was depressed and this time I was manic and blah, blah, blah. And then there's so many like baby versions or spawning versions of bipolar. I can't even get into all of them, but I'm going to say this wrong. Cythymic disorder, I'm going to spell it CYCLOTHYMIC disorder. And that's like a milder form of bipolar where basically there's these like kind of cyclical mood swings. It's just less severe as bipolar. And you, for the most part, appear to be functional, but you come across as like moody or difficult. I think that's kind of what my parents have. And for a while, I thought maybe I had that. I had severe mood swings. I had a lot of issues with ups and downs. But I think in some ways, because I was raised in that environment, and maybe my parents don't have it and they were mimicking their parents, and that I don't have it and I was mimicking my parents, because I feel much healthier after therapy and after clearly not living with my family, that I don't really mimic those things anymore. I do clearly suffer from depression, and I can be very inspired at times. So I don't know. And it sounds really crazy, but like that's how we would know Sam was headed towards a psychotic break, is because my brother would get really into stuff and be like really passionate. And anybody else and any other child, you'd be like, oh, my kid has found their passion and they're going to make something. But Sam would just get super passionate and be making stuff at 3 a.m. And it would get like it trained us to be scared of passion, because the next thing you know is like he thought he was Jesus, or he thought he was Buddha, and he's kidnapping people and he's being arrested for trespassing. And
is that like your joke when he had all the books?
Oh yeah,
he was burning the self-help books.
Yeah.
So you doing, buddy?
yeah. So I have a joke in my special about my brother setting fire to all my father's self-help books. And that's not me. That was he was already psychotic and in the early stages of having a psychotic break. My parents started making promises to my brother later on because he clearly hated being hospitalized. My brother is so smart. And I remember visiting my brother the first time he was in the psychiatric hospital and him being like, I don't belong here. It felt like he wasn't wrong. Like there were people that were like severely sick and like didn't seem coherent at all. It was like being in one of those movies about psychiatric wards and people shuffling around in PJs and not there and talking to themselves. And my brother wasn't like that at that point. And he was so smart that he'd be like, you got to get me out. I don't belong here. I mean, when he first started showing signs of a psychotic break, you know, I knew something was wrong. I would talk to him over like video chat when he was in college freshman year. And I was like, something's really off about my brother. And I told my parents and they didn't really like, he's always been an eccentric kid, but I was like, this is different. And he's being also mean. And my brother's not a mean guy. And he wasn't as bad as he ended up getting, but there was something off about it. And I remember telling my parents, and it wasn't until a couple months later that they went to go visit him. And my brother was like a homeless person at college. Like he had lost all his friends. He had ostracized himself because he was being so nutty that he was, you know how young boys are. If you scare off girls, we don't want to be around you. So he was scaring off girls. So all his guy friends dropped him. He stopped showering. He believed that his teachers were spying on him. Like he had all these grandiose theories. And my parents were like, literally like, how did nobody catch this? How did no person, he was still going to classes and being crazy and nobody called to be like, hey, we're worried about your son. That was kind of the turning point. And they couldn't get him to leave. He wanted to stay in Georgia. And I said, let's see if we can get him to live with me. That's how I was like, Sam, I think you need to come home and clearly you can come back if you want to. In the early stages, his psychotic breaks ebbed and flowed and he would be kind of normal. And then he would be like, I called it crazy eyes. We have very big eyes, obviously. And he would like do this thing with his eyes where he would stare off into the distance and he would go silent. And it was like a picture show was showing in his head. And I couldn't talk to him. It would be weird. And I'd be like, Sammy, what's going on? Sam, what happened? Sam, he's like, nothing, I'm fine. And he would have these weird distant moments. And then throughout him living with me, he would tell me about neighbors he met. I lived in this apartment for like 6 years. I never talked to a neighbor. I've never met a neighbor. I mean, I barely knew my super. And he would tell me about all these different people he met only to find out later they weren't real. Like,
oh, wow.
It was like, it was spooky.
I have a couple questions. One, were you already a little on alert with your siblings? Because I know you're kind of on alert with yourself because of your family's history. I think that you're sort of paying attention to any possible signs of mental illness for yourself.
Yeah.
Did you sort of watch over your siblings in the same way so that when Sammy was displaying any symptoms, you were kind of already like looking out for something like that? Does that make sense?
100%. I wrote an essay probably 10 years ago about being scared that I was going to lose my mind and that nobody would know or that I wouldn't see the signs of it. Like it would just happen. Like, I guess because I wasn't witness to the issues my parents had and I clearly wasn't witness to the issues my grandmothers had. And I knew that it ran in both sides of my family. Like everything that I kind of read, that you can have traumatic events that lead to bipolar disorder, but it's also extremely hereditary. And the fact that it was on both sides of my family, I was like, I mean, my dad's dyslexic and we all turned out to be dyslexic. Now, 2 people have mental illness in their family. How am I not going to go crazy? I was always waiting to lose my mind and I was having mood swings, emotional issues. So I already was exhibiting some of these habits that made me feel crazy and embarrassed about my personality and who I was. And I was always trying to keep it under wraps and hide it from people, that I was seeing these outbursts and these mood swings as precursors to me losing my mind. And it was only a matter of time. Going to therapy, even the first time with a therapist, that wasn't great. And just admitting that these were fears and all these kind of things that I was worried about myself and I didn't like about myself kind of really helped me acknowledge that I was holding all my family history, my fears of my family history, and my fears about my own mental stability inside for almost 25 years. Now looking back, I noticed Sam was really depressed in high school. He was just taking a lot of walks by himself and he had a few friends, but he wasn't really reaching out to them. And I think me and my dad really noticed that he was depressed, and depression clearly runs in our family as well. So we were aware of that, but it didn't seem that severe. And then when he was 18, 19 to then go to college and have clearly mania and then this psychotic break.
Is any part of you a little afraid of Sammy when he was staying with you?
I have been afraid of him. Sam. Absolutely. So his psychotic breaks progressed. They got truly worse. And there's a lot of theories that actually going on antipsychotics can make it worse. And he wasn't that bad when he was living with me. He was weird and different, but he was also, there was a lot of moments where he was Sammy. He was just Sam. And then he couldn't live with me anymore. It was like just, I'm literally sharing a room in an apartment with 2 other roommates, and it was taxing. And so then he ended up living with Emily, also in Brooklyn at the time. He started not being as good with Emmy, and it became too much for her. And then he moved home, and I just felt like home was its own triggers, and he just got worse. I don't know if he ever officially healed from that first psychotic break, or it was just a milder psychotic break that just ebbed and flowed and got worse. I have no idea. And then when he had to go to the hospital, he was on antipsychotics. There's a lot of theories, not to say that people shouldn't take them, but there are some people that believe that once you take an antipsychotic, the psychotic breaks get worse, or that once you have a psychotic break at all, every time it happens, it gets worse. Sammy's had 4 or 5 of them, and each time they've been exponentially worse. There have been times where Sam was really scary, and like my mom would tell me stories when she was with him, and I had to be like, Mom, that's not Sam anymore. And you hear these stories about mentally ill people killing their family, killing neighbors, people in their community, and it's your family and it's somebody you care about, and you go, well, my son would never hurt anybody. But I remember having to tell my mom that isn't Sammy. And by not taking him to the hospital, by not getting treatment, you are pretending that everything that he's doing is a part of his personality, and it's not. He's a mentally ill person now. And it sucks to talk about anybody like that and your brother, but nothing about his behavior was normal to him or normal to society. And he was really, really scary, and he was doing really scary stuff. He got caught for trespassing twice and got picked up by the cops. One time they drove him straight to the hospital, and another time they drove him home. And then my mom, I think, called the cops on him once or twice because she couldn't convince him. Because that's the other thing, when you're an adult, you have to voluntarily, you either have to do something crazy and somebody sends you to a hospital, or you have to voluntarily go. So he wasn't doing it. He was mostly staying in the house being crazy. And their parents took the car keys away. Like, they started to do things where, like, when they saw things going down, they would like take his keys away and say he couldn't drive. But like I said, my brother's super smart. So sometimes he'd be like, I'm fine. And then he would come back with a broken car and he was not fine. And my parents let him drive to Quick Check, being pretty much crazy. Like,
what's an example of something that is worrying to the point of I better call the cops because it's not this person anymore?
My brother stabbed a tree and said it was my father. God, he would literally pace in the backyard. I have an essay I wrote about it where we called him free range Sam, because he would pace in the backyard all day talking to himself and laughing, like literally like a movie, just maniacal laughing at jokes and stories and people in his own head. He didn't come inside. He slept on a hammock on this kind of enclosed porch my parents had for months at a time. And my mom would bring him Quick Check sandwiches and tasty cakes and like almost like a feral. My mom literally, I remember my mom did it for like 2 weeks, and he would only eat like 1 meal a day, and she would push these sandwiches and he wouldn't even look at her. And my mom was so frustrated and stressed that he asked for something. And she's like, you can't just live on my porch like a feral cat. And my brother laughed, like a real laugh, like not his weird maniacal laugh, like gut laughed for the first time in months. And it was like my mom, I remember my mom telling me, she's like, it was the first time I felt like he was my son again. He would get mean, and my brother's not. My brother is an absolute teddy bear. He's not a big guy. He's like 5'10". He's somebody that I would have never seen as intimidating until I saw the mean version of him. And all of a sudden I would remember that he's twice my size, or that he could hurt me, or he could hurt my mother or my parents. And that was always the hardest part, is talking to my brother as not my brother. My parents felt so bad. Like, my brother would hysterically cry and beg them not to hospitalize him because it's such an awful place to be. And it's funny because Gary Goldman in his special, The Great Depression, talks about how the mental hospitals he went to were great and that they weren't like the movies and stuff like that. But it really depends on funding. It depends on what's wrong with you. Like, my brother was having psychotic breaks. It's very different from maybe being suicidal and having depression. Like, who you are and how you're being treated is based on your symptoms and issues. And being a danger to yourself is very different than being a danger to others. I don't know. I think what's really difficult about about being an outsider and it being somebody that I care about is differentiating between the disease and the human. And not to dismiss somebody that is mentally ill isn't human, but they're not acting the way that they normally would. And you can't make the assumption like Sammy would never hurt anybody. Yes, but this isn't, you know how like amoebas will take over and they'll take your nutrition, like they'll take your nutrients. So like, yes, you're eating food, but you never actually get the nutrients, and it steals it. And that's how the host dies. It's almost the same way, where it's like he's walking around and being a person, but this disease is the one that's making the decisions, and it's no longer my brother anymore. I have a lot of friends that are bipolar too. So we had AJ Mendez on the show. I became friends with her because I do another less frequent podcast for the Jed Foundation called Jed Voices, where I interview notable people and celebrities that openly talk about mental illness. And so she was my first interview. She was awesome. I read her book called Crazy is My Superpower, and it was about how her and her mother both got diagnosed at the same time and were both suicidal at the same time. And that's how they discovered they had bipolar 2. So my brother's kind of funny when I would be like, oh, I have a friend and they have bipolar. He goes, 1 or 2. Anybody can do 2. Two's easy.
There's like status levels.
Yeah. Well, my brother, because there's a ton, I actually looked up, there's a ton of celebrities that talk about being bipolar.
Yeah.
And they're both hard. I don't think you should be dismissive, but it's a little bit easier to be successful with bipolar 2 because the mania, you get a lot done. And then the depression is like this rest, I don't want to call it a rest period. It's a very devastating, difficult period that also comes with like suicidal thoughts. But there's this ebb and flow, as opposed to bipolar 1. It's, you have the depression, you have the mania, and then you have this thing that, my brother would be hospitalized for a while. And what we learned is it takes anywhere from a year to 2 years for your brain to heal after a psychotic break. It's so taxing to your mind that like your brain literally has to heal from it. Knowing that, I think it's been 4 years since my brother's had a psychotic break. And like, we can see how much healthier my brother is and how much more my brother is himself now, 3-4 years later, as opposed to a year later, even though the medication was helping and he was healthier and all that stuff.
So that's what it is that he started taking medication. I know he was against it at first, but is it something that like after a while it evens out and it stops being a thing that he feels has taken his life away?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my brother was extremely anti-medication, and it was really like, if you want to get out of this hospital, you need to take it. So in the beginning, he had to take mood stabilizers, he had to take antipsychotics, like these heavy drugs that I think are hard on the body and clearly aggressive on the mind because they're fixing these problems. It was really hard to get him to take the medication to be better. And then once they're no longer psychotic, it's about balancing out the, I want to say chemicals in the brain. I don't even know if that's the right way of saying it, but to balance him out after like all that stuff, my brother would be on lithium. And lithium is like this old drug. I think it's a mineral. Like there's something about lithium. There's actually a lot of really cool stuff about it, but it's been a treatment since the 50s, and it has very low side effects. It's been used forever. And there's so many kind of benefits to it. So my brother's been on on lithium consistently for 6 years, I think, but he's gone off it. Some of the psychotic breaks happened because my brother's like, I don't need this anymore. There's 2 reasons my brother went off medication. One is it feels good to be psychotic. Like you can read about it, but also just talking to my brother, the same way somebody might do heroin and lose their whole life. You know what I mean? Like, why would you lost your family, you lost your job, you lost your leg. Why would you keep doing heroin? It feels good. Life is hard. This makes me feel better, but it doesn't just make me feel better. It makes me feel better than better. My brother has said it feels really good to be psychotic. The best I can describe it is the way people talk about drugs. It just feels really good. So my brother would basically be like, life sucks. And now I'm just kind of numb because I'm on this medication. I'd rather go feel good. I'm living at home with my parents. I can't drive. I'm not, he wasn't allowed to smoke weed anymore, and he used to always smoke weed. He doesn't have any friends. He can't work. So my brother was like, I'm literally an indoor cat and my life sucks. I remember a couple months ago feeling happy. I was happy. I was laughing in the backyard. I remember it. My brother remembers all his psychotic breaks. So that was the first problem, is that my brother had stopped taking his medication because he hated his life, and he remembers when he felt physically and mentally better. So the other thing is like my mom would have to remind him to take his meds. Hey, take your meds at dinner. Take your meds at dinner. And we were a little worried that my brother could never live independently, or really, he was never that responsible before. But now this is a real level of responsibility. You don't take this and you could lose your freedom, being alive, all this stuff. There's real dire consequences to him not taking his medication. But that wasn't enough for Sam. He just had my mom remind him. I think another time, it wasn't that he messed up. He was taking Adderall because he has ADD and he wanted to get get work done. And really the thing is like he couldn't be creative when he was on lithium. So the doctor let him have Adderall, but the Adderall was too strong and it broke through and it made it so the lithium didn't work. And then he had a psychotic break. So then he couldn't take that anymore. So there's been all these different combos of drugs. That's the biggest thing, is like, you don't just like take drugs and it works. You have to find the special combo for each person, the amount you take, what drugs you take, what combination of drugs. So we learned, you know, he couldn't smoke weed, but now my brother, he's been hospitalized so much. He hates it so much. It's such an awful experience that my brother is more responsible, will never go off his meds because the consequences are too dire. So as much as I wish mental hospitals didn't suck, or at least the ones he went to, and it wasn't such a bad experience, it being a bad experience is what keeps him on his medication.
Right.
So it's like this weird catch-22, which is they should be better. Everything about, I could go on rants about the healthcare system, how we treat mental illness. You know, there's no preventative medicine in the sense that, you know, half of them don't pay for therapy or care about mental health or even see it as a real illness. I think it was Nixon, I forget who was the president that dismantled in the 70s. I should know, if I knew my presidents, I would know, dismantled all the mental hospitals. Now they were very corrupt and there were a lot of issues. They were misrun and people were mistreated and there was so much horrible things happening in them in the 70s. That being said, they're still necessary and they still have a place for them. And now you either have to be uber rich, you have to be a celebrity that can pay almost like college tuition to go to these like bougie mental hospitals, or you go to the state funded ones. You have to have health insurance. If you don't have health insurance, I mean, they drug you and kick you out. Even with health insurance, they drug you and kick you out. So there's been times that my brother was kind of better and then they drugged him and kicked him out. And then he just never really healed and he had to go back in a couple weeks later. There's a fair amount of mentally ill homeless people because there has to be somebody paying for it and nobody's paying for it. And then let's say you're a homeless person, a mental hospital takes you and they give you drugs. You need to pay for those drugs going forward. How do you continue to pay for it if you don't even have a job and you can't feed yourself? So we don't take care of our mentally ill and they become our homeless. Same thing with veterans and PTSD and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think I remember that about the Reagan administration, and he like shut down the mental hospitals, and so they were all in the streets, and then Rudy Giuliani was like, just go west, and so like they all ended up on Skid Row. You once diagnosed me a long time ago with bipolar disorder.
So one of the signs is risky behavior and financial risk, and I wouldn't be surprised if we both have like one of those low dose. I hate when people use mental illness as a way to hurt people. Oh, this fucking manic depressive bitch, this bipolar, like you're being like,
well, that's what gave me pause, is that you don't say this stuff lightly. You're not the type of person to be like, oh, I have such OCD about this thing.
Yeah.
Unless you have OCD. When you were like, yeah, I think you have a form of bipolar. And I was like, sorry, what? But I didn't, what risk taking? I don't take risks. And is it just because my room's messy? It's my personality.
Yeah, no. So there's tons of different forms of it, by the way. And so they're actually, one of the celebrities that has always been open about it is Patty Duke. She's an older, but I read her book and learned a lot from it. I've also read a couple of other mental illness books, but what I liked about hers and this other book, A First Rate Madness, in both the Patty Duke book and that book, they talk about all the different versions of bipolar. So I don't think either of us have the extreme versions, but that kind of baby version, and then there's even more baby versions attached to it. It's these impulsive behaviors, they're somewhat cyclical. There's like rapid cycling. So there's somebody that there's a couple different rapid cyclings. There's ones that like throughout the year, they go through these trends of ups and downs. And then there's also throughout the day, which kind of looks like mood swings. And that's actually kind of, because I had such bad mood swings, I started to think maybe I had a form of that. And who knows, maybe I do. I feel like I've gotten healthier in the sense that it was more like I was mirroring somebody else's habits. Some of the things that I really respect about you is kind of your impulsiveness. I remember so clearly when you lived in New York, you were like, if one more person breaks my heart, I'm fucking moving to LA. And then some boy broke your heart. And next thing I know, I'm helping you pack boxes. And I was like, those bitches serious. Like, it was super early in our friendship. It was like, 3 years into our friendship. And I was like, oh, I would have tried to convince her not to. And now I'm mailing your shit to LA. And then you decided you were going to move to London and da-da-da-da. And I've always liked that. I've seen with friends that are truly bipolar too. And I've seen it with people that have something similar to what I think maybe my parents have, which is this baby version of bipolar. And so there was one that just specifically literally sounded like, I remember reading it to you and you're like, that's not me. And I was like, you don't even relate to that? I was like, you were like, that's 100% not me. And I was like, 100% not you? Like, I get that And I think what's weird is if you would have told me something that you were like, this is you, and it hurt me or upset me, I would clearly be hurt and upset, but I would also be like, well, I can't see myself the way you see me. And if the person that knows me best has concern or thinks this applies to me, maybe I should give it some pause.
Yeah, because I think it was also like you were saying it in like, because I moved so much. Like I moved times in New York and then like 7 times in LA, and now I'm in London. But I remember one time I'd come back from a military tour and I was like, the guy like said I was difficult.
I know that.
Am I difficult? And then you're in the mirror, like putting
I remember I literally was putting on mascara. I was looking in the mirror. You were behind me and I could see you. I thought you had a knife to my neck when you asked this question. You were like, you love me. You would tell me the truth. Am I difficult? And I was like,
it was so funny.
I was like, do you want the friendship answer or the real answer?
I still don't see how I'm difficult. I
can see how I'm difficult. You don't like not getting your way. I would love to know other people's experiences, both with themselves and family members that have dealt with bipolar. I think it's an illness that is starting to be talked about and understood a little bit more. People be a little less fearful of it. Like I was even just looking up celebrities that had it, although I hate our culture that nobody talks about stuff until somebody high profile talks about it. You shouldn't have to be a celebrity to know that this is a problem and that people should get treatment and people are not just on the streets, not having a job and not taking care of themselves for funsies. I am grateful that more and more celebrities, athletes are talking about all different types of mental illness, and that's great. And we should continue to destigmatize it and fight for treatment and fight for it to be a part of regular health insurance. But I can get a little resentful of the only time people listen is when a celebrity talks about it or when a celebrity is in trouble, when we all see from around us everyday people are struggling with this and don't have access because they're not rich. So I don't know. I like hearing personal experiences about it. One of the nice things about performing the jokes about my brother is I had so many people come up to me after shows and were like, oh, my mom has bipolar 1 or my brother had it. Being able to laugh about it. Because that's the other thing is like I had a couple of people, not a lot, but a couple of people when I posted the joke recently that were like, you shouldn't make fun of it. Fuck you. That's how we got through it. Are you kidding me? While my brother is doing batshit crazy stuff, we're laughing about it. And now with my brother being healthy, we've laughed about it. And I always ask my brother permission to tell jokes about it. And his rule is as long as it's funny. We heal with dark humor. We heal with making jokes about it. People believe that by joking, there's a lack of seriousness and a lack of empathy. And that is not the case at all. It is not mutually exclusive. I can be empathetic and make jokes. I can be making jokes and know that this is a very serious topic. And so I think for me and my family, we've always had a dark sense of humor. We've always had really horrible things happen and we've gotten through it by joking about it. So I understand that's not how everybody processes mental illness and darker topics. But I don't know. I'm really grateful for the people that have come up to me after shows and share their experiences, and been grateful that I was able to not only openly talk about it, but make jokes about it. And my jokes are usually somewhat positive. Like even the joke about my brother setting fire to stuff, the punchline is my mom being like, he basically sets fire to a bunch of self-help books. And my mom is like, that's the sanest thing anyone in this family's ever done, which is a real quote from my mom when that happened.
Yeah.
Like it's me empowering my mother.
Very true.
Yeah, it's bringing joy with darkness has always been the thing that's gotten me through hard times, but also I would say is how I describe my comedy. So I would like to hear people's experiences. Clearly, if we got anything wrong, we're always wrong, but we appreciate you guys. And this was, I think Kreger was one of the people that suggested this topic, and he's been a longtime fan of our podcast. So thank you, Kreger.
Thanks,
for
Kreger. But let's be real. This whole episode was about showing off our nail color.
I just did it.
I know. It's so pretty. It's so pretty.
I did an accent nail because it's just about mixing up colors. I wish I could bring my toes up so you could see how cute my toes are. I feel so seen.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate
you. Thank you. Bye.